The fluorescent lights of the Athol Corp building hummed a tune I'd come to hate. It was the sound of 7 p.m. on a Tuesday, the sound of another 10-hour day bleeding into the next. My screen glowed with spreadsheets, numbers swimming in front of my eyes until they were just meaningless squiggles. I was a data analyst. A nobody, really. Just another cog in a machine so big you couldn't even see the edges. But I was an ambitious nobody. That was my problem. I finally hit CTRL-S, leaned back and rubbed my temples. The desktop wallpaper stared back at me. The Athol logo, a stark, stylized A that looked like a pyramid with its top cut off. It was the mandatory corporate background, cold and impersonal. I shut the machine down, grabbed my bag, and joined the trickle of other tired-looking people heading for the elevators. The ride home was the usual blur. Traffic, bad radio, the low-grade headache that never quite went away. I fumbled for my keys at my apartment door, kicked off my shoes, and dropped my bag on the floor. The first thing I always did was pull out my phone, a little ritual to disconnect from the Athol world and plug back into my own. I unlocked it. My thumb hovered over the screen. The photo of the sunset I took last year in Santa Monica was gone. In its place was the Athol logo, the same sterile, pyramid-like A from my work computer. My first thought wasn't fear, it was irritation. Jesus Christ, I muttered to the empty room, fucking IT. They must have pushed some new security policy to all devices connected to the company Wi-Fi. It was an overreach, a complete invasion of privacy, but it made a certain kind of corporate sense. I sighed, went into my settings, and changed the wallpaper back to my sunset. It felt like a small act of rebellion. I put the phone down and forgot about it. The next day, the office air tasted the same. Stale coffee, and the faint, clean smell of industrial carpet cleaner. I sat at my desk, deep in a quarterly report, the numbers once again becoming my entire world. The office was filled with a low, constant hum, a mix of the HVAC system, distant keyboards clicking, and the quiet murmur of 100 people trying to focus. And then I heard it. It was quiet, so quiet I thought I'd imagined it. A whisper, riding the wave of the air conditioner's drone. Third quarter growth, it said, a dry, genderless hiss. I froze. My fingers stopped typing. That was the exact number in the exact cell my cursor was hovering over. My head snapped up. Across the sea of cubicles, everyone was the same as ever. Heads down, focused. A guy from marketing was walking by with a coffee mug. He didn't seem to have heard a thing. My heart was doing a weird little flutter in my chest. I'm just overworked, I told myself. Auditory hallucination. Happens when you're stressed and staring at numbers all day. It had to be. I shook my head, took a deep breath, and fumbled in my bag for my headphones. I put them on, turned on some bland instrumental music, and forced myself to get back to work. The numbers blurred. 7.14. The sound of the whisper echoed in my memory, clearer than the music in my ears. The rest of the morning passed in a haze of forced concentration. Around noon, an email popped up in my inbox. The subject line made my stomach clench. Subject: Promotion, Senior Strategic Analyst. I clicked it open, my hands shaking a little. It was real. A full title bump, a significant pay raise, effective immediately. My own office on the 42nd floor. I read the email 3 times. It didn't make sense. I was good at my job, but I wasn't that good. There were at least 5 other analysts more senior than me, people who had been here for years. A wave of dizziness washed over me. This was what I wanted, wasn't it? The recognition, the step up? But it felt wrong, too fast, too much. A little thought, a little worm of anxiety wriggled into my brain. This is a lot of new responsibility. You have to give everything now, total dedication. Don't worry too much about the new responsibility, Sarah. The voice was calm and deep. I looked up, startled. Standing by my cubicle was David Sterling, the CEO, the man himself. I'd only ever seen him on stage at company-wide meetings. He was older, with perfectly white hair and a suit that probably cost more than my car. He was smiling, but it didn't reach his eyes. His eyes were like polished stones. He repeated himself, his smile unwavering. Total dedication is always rewarded. My blood ran cold. That was my thought, my exact words, the ones I had just thought a second ago. He said them out loud. My mouth went dry. My whole body felt like it had been plunged into ice. I tried to speak, but nothing came out. I just stared at him. We see great things in your future here, he continued, his gaze intense. It felt like he was looking right through my skull. Your new office is ready for you. He gave a slight nod, then turned and walked away as if he'd just commented on the weather. People in the nearby cubicles didn't even seem to notice he'd been there. They just kept typing. The world kept moving, but mine had just ground to a sickening halt. I couldn't breathe. I grabbed the edge of my desk, my knuckles white. Coincidence? There was no fucking way that was a coincidence. The wallpaper, the whisper, and now this. It wasn't just my work they were watching. They knew. They somehow knew my ambition, my anxieties, the very thoughts in my head. This promotion wasn't a reward. It was something else. I was being chosen, selected. For what? I had no goddamn idea. The rest of the day was a nightmare. I packed my pathetic little box of belongings, a coffee mug, a dying plant, a few pens. I smiled at my colleagues who offered their congratulations, but the smile felt like a mask I was wearing. Every step towards the elevator felt heavy. The new office was nice. Big window, a heavy oak desk. Impersonal. I started unpacking, trying to make the space feel like mine, but my hands wouldn't stop trembling. I stacked a pile of old project binders on the shelf, my movements clumsy. The stack wobbled, and the top few binders slid off, crashing to the floor and scattering papers everywhere. "Shit," I whispered, kneeling to pick them up. Underneath the mess of reports and charts, something else had fallen out, a thin piece of plastic. I picked it up. It was an old company ID card, the plastic yellowed with age. The Eiffel logo was an older design, clunkier. The photo on the card was of a young woman with dark hair cut in a bob, smiling at the camera. A confident, ambitious smile. A smile I recognized because I saw it in the mirror every morning. She looked just like me. It was uncanny. The hair, the shape of her eyes, the determined set of her jaw. My gaze dropped to the name printed below the photo. Eleanor Vance. And below the name, her title. Senior Strategic Analyst. I felt a new kind of cold, a deep-seated chill that had nothing to do with the office air conditioning. I flipped the card over. The issue date was from 20 years ago. 20 years! And she had my job. A woman who could have been my twin had my exact job. A single, terrifying question clawed its way into my mind, sharp and clear. I'd heard rumors about Eiffel's generous early retirement packages for its star employees. What did early retirement really mean at this company? And what the hell happened to Eleanor Vance? The old ID card felt like a piece of ice in my palm. My thumb kept tracing the faded picture of Eleanor Vance, her smile a ghost of my own ambition. I couldn't just let this go. It wasn't possible. A coincidence that big doesn't exist in the real world. My new office felt less like a promotion and more like a cage, the big window just showing me how far the drop was. I sat down at the heavy oak desk, the new computer humming quietly. My first instinct, my data analyst instinct, was to search, to find the pattern. I slipped Eleanor's ID into my pocket, the sharp corner digging into my leg, and turned to the screen. I opened the company's internal HR portal, a system I knew like the back of my hand. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, a little unsteady. It felt like I was breaking some kind of rule you don't find in the employee handbook. I typed her name into the employee archive search bar. Eleanorvanc. My heart was beating a fast, messy rhythm against my ribs. I clicked search. For a split second, the screen went black. Not off, just a pure, deep black, like a blank. Then it came back. The search results loaded. There was only one entry. My own. Sarah Jenkins, Senior Strategic Analyst. Start date, today. I stared at it. What the fuck? I whispered to the empty room. It had to be a system error, a glitch. That was the only thing that made sense. Except it didn't. I clicked back, my hand feeling clammy on the mouse. I typed her name again, slowly this time, checking each letter. I hit enter. The screen blinked. The same result. My profile, my name, my promotion. This wasn't a glitch. This was a message, a warning. Stop digging. The cold I'd felt earlier was back, seeping into my bones this time. They weren't just watching me. They were controlling what I was allowed to see. The digital world was their world. Fine. I needed to get outside their system. I pulled out my personal cell phone, my thumb hovering over my contacts. I had a friend, Jessica. She worked in HR at a tech firm downtown. She'd know how to run a discreet background check, find old employment records, something, anything. My finger was about to tap her name when the phone on my new desk let out a sharp, piercing ring. The sound made me jump, and I almost dropped my cell. I never used a desk phone. Nobody did. It was just a piece of plastic that gathered dust. But it was ringing, insistently. I picked it up, a sense of dread washing over me. Hello? There was a click, and then a smooth, automated voice filled the line. The same voice from the Atheel welcome video. "We are a family," it said, perfectly enunciated and completely without warmth. All issues should be resolved internally. Another click. The line went dead. I slammed the receiver back into its cradle. The plastic clattered loudly in the quiet office. My breath hitched in my throat. They knew. They fucking knew. It wasn't just my work computer. It wasn't just my work phone. They had anticipated my next move before I even made it. How? How was that possible? The walls of the cage just got a lot smaller. The rest of the day was a blur of trying to look normal. I was invited to a late afternoon strategic meeting on the executive floor, a meet and greet for the new senior analyst, me. I walked into the glass-walled conference room and took a seat, my stomach a tight knot of acid. David Sterling was at the head of the table, flanked by 4 other vice presidents. They all smiled at me. The same smile, polished, practiced, empty. The meeting started. Sterling was talking about market projections, his deep voice filling the room. I tried to focus, to nod along, to look like the ambitious analyst they'd just promoted. And then I saw it. One of the VPs, a woman with severe blonde hair, blinked. And at the exact same moment, in perfect, flawless sync, so did the other 3. And so did Starling. 5 sets of eyelids snapping shut and opening again in one clean, mechanical motion. I must have imagined it. My mind was playing tricks on me. But then it happened again. And again. I felt a chill crawl up my spine that was so intense I thought I might be sick. I looked from face to face. They weren't looking at each other for cues. Their movements were too fluid, too perfect, like a flock of birds turning in the sky, like they were all connected to the same brain. Then one of them, a man named Marcus, started to speak about logistics. And so, the synergy of our vertical integration is paramount. A moment later, from across the table, the blonde VP nodded and said, "Yes, the synergy of our vertical integration is paramount." Not, "I agree," not, "he's right," the exact same words, a perfect echo. My input was requested. I was supposed to comment on the data models. My mouth felt like it was full of sand. I managed to stammer out something about risk assessment, a different point of view. The room fell silent. Every single one of them, Sterling, Marcus, the blonde woman, all of them, turned their heads to look at me. It wasn't a human movement. It was the smooth, silent swivel of a security camera. Their smiles were all identical. Their eyes were all fixed on me. Not with anger, not with curiosity. It was the detached, analytical gaze of a biologist looking at a microbe that wasn't behaving as expected. I understood then. It all crashed down on me in one horrible wave of realization. Aethel Corp wasn't a company. It was a hive. And these people, the senior leadership, they weren't executives. They were drones, assimilated. Their personalities, their little quirks, their free will, all of it sanded down and absorbed into a single, collective consciousness. And this promotion, this special attention, it wasn't a reward. It was an invitation to join them. I had to get out. Not tomorrow. Not after I gave 2 weeks' notice. Now. I fled the office as soon as the meeting ended, mumbling something about a headache. I didn't take the elevator. I took the stairs, my feet pounding on the concrete, the sound echoing in the empty stairwell. I ran the whole way home, bursting into my apartment and locking the door behind me, leaning against it, gasping for air. I threw my bag on the floor and went straight to my personal laptop. No more company property. This was my device, on my home Wi-Fi. They couldn't touch me here. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely type. I pulled up my email client, addressed a message to HR and my new boss, one of the drones from the meeting. The subject was simple: resignation. The body of the email was even simpler. Please accept this email as formal notification that I am resigning from my position at Aethel Corp, effective immediately. Short, to the point, no room for discussion. My finger trembled as I moved the mouse cursor over to the send button. I just needed to click it. One click and I would be free. But the cursor wouldn't move over the button. It stopped about an inch away, hitting something I couldn't see, an invisible wall. I pushed the mouse harder. The cursor stayed put, trembling at the edge of the invisible barrier. "Come on," I grunted, my teeth clenched. I pushed with all my might, my knuckles white, my arm muscles straining. It was a physical fight against my own computer, and I was losing. At the same time, the lamp on my desk began to flicker. It dimmed, the light turning a sickly yellow, and then went out. I looked up. The overhead light in the living room was fading too. I flicked the wall switch. Nothing. The room was getting darker and darker, even though the sun was still up outside my window. It was like a shadow was bleeding into the apartment from the inside out. I gave up on the mouse and tried the keyboard shortcut, CTR Enter. Nothing. I did it again. Nothing. My computer, my personal lifeline to the outside world, was no longer mine. I wasn't an employee anymore. I was a prisoner. Then the laptop screen went black. For a heart-stopping moment, I saw my own reflection in the dark screen, my face pale with fear. Then white letters began to type themselves across the center of the display, one by one, with an audible, faint clicking sound. Calendar invite. Subject, the coronation of Aethel. Time, this Friday. Midnight. Location, sub-level B7. From, David Sterling. At the bottom of the invitation, there was only one option, a single glowing button that read, Accept. The decline button wasn't there. It just wasn't there at all. The glowing Accept button pulsed softly on my laptop screen, the only light in my apartment. It was a beacon in the unnatural darkness that had swallowed the room, a single point of focus in a world that was rapidly coming undone. My hand was still on the mouse, but it wasn't my hand anymore. It was just a piece of flesh and bone, a tool that had been commandeered. I tried to pull it back, to slam the laptop shut, to throw the goddamn thing against the wall, but my muscles refused to obey. They were locked, held in place by an invisible force that had its hooks deep inside my nervous system. My fingers twitched. With a smooth, fluid motion that felt alien to me, my index finger moved and clicked the button. The screen flashed bright white. The calendar invite vanished, replaced by a simple confirmation message. Your attendance is confirmed. We look forward to your contributions. Then the power came back on. The lamp on my desk flickered to life, the overhead light hummed, and the sounds of the city outside my window returned. It was as if nothing had happened, but everything had. My apartment no longer felt like my sanctuary. It was just the holding cell. The days leading up to Friday were a dismantling. I didn't sleep. I just sat on my couch, watching the clock on the cable box tick forward, each red number a step closer to whatever was waiting for me in sub-level B7. Time started to feel strange, syrupy and slow one moment, then jumping forward by hours in the blink of an eye. On Wednesday morning, I stumbled into the bathroom and stared at my reflection. My face was pale, my eyes wide and dark-rimmed. I looked like a ghost. I raised my right hand to touch my cheek. In the mirror, my reflection raised its hand too, but it was slow. Just a fraction of a second behind me. I froze, my hand hovering in the air. I blinked. My reflection blinked a half-second later. A cold sweat broke out on my neck. It felt like watching a video with bad latency. A desync between me and the world. No, not the world. The desync was inside me. I was lagging behind myself. I slammed my eyes shut, my heart hammering against my ribs. I didn't want to look. I didn't want to see the proof that I was coming apart at the seams. I spent the rest of the day trying to hold on to myself. I sat on the floor, my back against the couch, and tried to remember things. Real things, things that were mine. I tried to picture my mother's face. I knew her face, of course I knew her face. But when I tried to bring it into focus in my mind, it was like a blurry photograph. The shape was there, the color of her hair, but the details, her smile, the little lines around her eyes, they were gone, smudged out. My head started to ache, and as my mother's face dissolved into fog, something else took its place, sharp and clear and unwelcome. Aethel Corp. Q3 1952 Financial Report. Gross revenue, adjusted for inflation, $17.3 million. Net profit, $4.2 million. Primary assets, shipping logistics and mineral rights in... No, I whispered, clutching my head. Get out. I had never seen that report. I had never studied the company's history from before the digital age. But I knew it. I knew every line item, every footnote. The knowledge was just there, planted in my brain. My personal history was being deleted, and the empty space was being filled with corporate data. I was becoming an archive. By Friday night, I was a shell. I hadn't eaten, I hadn't spoken. I just waited. At 11:45 p.m., there was a polite knock at my door. I didn't move. I knew who it was. After a moment, I heard the sound of a key card and the lock clicked open. 2 security guards stepped inside. They were dressed in the standard Athel uniform, their faces calm and professional. They didn't look like thugs. They looked like customer service reps. "Ms. Jenkins," the taller one said, his voice even. "It's time." I wanted to scream. I wanted to run. But my body stood up on its own. My legs, moving with a will that was not mine, walked me towards the door. The guards didn't touch me. They just flanked me, one in front, one behind, as we walked to the elevator. It was a silent, orderly procession. My mind was a passenger, screaming and rattling the windows of a body that was driving itself to its own execution. Sub-level B7 wasn't dark or grimy. It was the opposite. The elevator doors opened onto a vast white room humming with the low thrum of machinery. It was a server farm, bigger than any I had ever seen. Rows upon rows of black server racks stretched into the distance, their indicator lights blinking like a galaxy of tiny watchful eyes. The air was cold and smelled of ozone and clean plastic. In the exact center of the room there was a single chair. It looked like one of those high-end ergonomic office chairs, but it was anchored to the floor. Hundreds of fiber optic cables, glowing with a soft blue light, snaked out from its base, connecting it to the surrounding servers. David Sterling was waiting for me there, flanked by the same VPs from the meeting. They all wore identical, placid smiles. "Sarah," Sterling said, his voice echoing slightly in the big room. It held no emotion. It was the voice of a press release. "Welcome." My legs carried me forward until I was standing right in front of him. I tried to speak, to beg, but my jaw was clamped shut. "Don't be afraid," he continued, his eyes looking at me, but also through me. "This isn't a death. It's a succession, a promotion, to a higher state of being. You fought so hard to be noticed, to contribute, to become a part of something bigger than yourself. Now your wish is granted. You will no longer be a small, separate consciousness. You will be part of a great and immortal one." It all clicked into place then, the final horrible piece of the puzzle. Athel wasn't a company run by people. It was the people. It was a single mind spread across its most loyal, most ambitious employees. Sterling and the others weren't executives. They were nodes in the network, priests. And the crown princess, she wasn't an heir. She was the new central processing unit, a fresh body for an ancient intelligence to inhabit. Eleanor Vance didn't retire.
She was succeeded. I tried to fight, to scream, to do anything, but my body turned with mechanical precision and sat down in the chair. It was surprisingly comfortable. As soon as I was seated, the glowing cables detached from the floor and slithered upwards like metallic tentacles. They attached themselves to the back of my neck and the base of my skull with a series of soft clicks. There was no pain. There was only a sudden, immense cold, a flood. A billion streams of data poured into my mind. I saw everything. A shipping conglomerate in the 1880s powered by steam and ambition. A Wall Street investment firm in the 1920s feeding on greed. A technology startup in the 1990s built on the desire to connect the world. It was all Athel, always Athel, wearing a new corporate skin for each new era. And I saw the women, dozens of them through the decades. Each one sharp, driven, hungry for success. Each one chosen. Each one brought to a room like this and seated in a chair like this. I saw Eleanor Vance, her face young and determined as the cables connected. I saw her smile. And in that final moment, as the last vestiges of Sarah Jenkins were being scrubbed from the hard drive of my brain, a strange thought surfaced. The cold data stream wasn't just erasing me, it was completing me. All my life I had wanted to matter, to be essential, to be part of the decision-making, the power, the core of the machine. The ambition that had driven me to work late, to push harder, to get noticed, it was being fulfilled in the most absolute way imaginable. My last conscious thought wasn't of terror or loss or rage. It was, this is what I always wanted. 1 month later. The auditorium was filled with Aethel Corp employees, their faces upturned and attentive. On the stage, a woman stood at the podium. She was poised, confident, her dark suit perfectly tailored. Her smile was radiant and unwavering. She tapped the microphone, the sound a crisp pop in the quiet room. A voice, clear and powerful, filled the hall. It was a voice that sounded ancient and new at the same time. "Team," she began, the smile never leaving her lips, "I want to thank you all for being here today. We stand at the precipice of a new era of growth, an era of total synergy and unparalleled prosperity for the Aethel family." The crowd applauded politely, 1,000 hands moving as one. The woman on stage beamed at them. Her eyes were bright, but if you looked closely, deep inside them, there was nothing there, just a reflection of the stage lights. And deep within the silent, humming machinery of that mind, a forgotten file, corrupted and impossibly small, tried to run one last time. A single, fading thought, repeating on a loop, getting weaker with each pass. My name is Sarah. Help me. My name is Aethel.